Last Saturday, I was sitting in a booth at this fancy joint downtown, Marvin's Grill, all polished wood and overpriced steaks, watching my sister Lisa tear into a burger I just paid for. She's got this laugh, loud and sharp, like a crow calling out, and she let it rip after saying something that still burns in my ears. Even that bum outside's got more going for him than you, Jake. The whole table, my mom, Diane, my brother-in-law, Rick, and even their kid, Tommy, cracked up like it was the funniest thing ever. Me? I didn't say a word. Just pushed my chair back, dropped some cash on the table, and walked out. A month later, Lisa was begging me to talk, but by then, I'd seen her for who she really was. Funny how little kindness can rip the mask off someone you thought you knew. Here's the deal. I've always been the oddball in our family. Growing up, Lisa and my dad ran this hardware store, Taylor's Tools, a local staple. Dad wanted me in on it too, but I said no thanks, went off, and built my own thing, a small trucking company that's done all right. Lisa took over the store when Dad retired, and she's never let me forget I ditched the family legacy. Thing is, I've got enough cash now that when we all get together, I'm usually the one picking up the tab. That night at Marvin's was supposed to be a big deal. Lisa had landed some hotshot contract, and I figured I'd treat everyone to celebrate her win. Mom was there, beaming at Lisa like always. Rick, Lisa's husband, was nodding along to her every word, and Tommy, their 10-year-old, was the only one I could stand, sweet kid, always chattering about his model planes. It was going fine at first. Lisa was holding court, bragging about her deal, while I half listened and asked Tommy about his latest project, a B-17 bomber he'd been gluing together. Then the food came, and that's when it went sideways. Through the window, I spotted this old guy out front, huddled under a streetlight with a beat-up duffel bag. Looked like he hadn't eaten in days, and the October chill was biting hard. I've been lucky enough to have extra to share, so I caught our waiter's eye and told him to whip up a cheeseburger and fries, to go, on my dime. Didn't make a fuss about it, just figured it was the right thing. Lisa noticed, though. She leaned over, smirking, and said, "What's this, Jake? Playing hero again?" I shrugged it off, kept talking to Tommy about his plane's paint job. But she wouldn't drop it. "You know," she said, loud enough for the next table to hear, "it's hilarious how you pull these stunts to look good. Trying to wash away all those times you screwed up and Dad had to fix it." I didn't bite, just focused on Tommy, who'd gone quiet, picking up on the tension. Rick started chuckling, egging her on, and the waiter came back with the bag. I grabbed it and headed outside. The old guy was grateful, took the food with a shaky, "God bless you." But as I handed it over, Lisa's voice cut through the open window. "Even that bum's got more worth than you, Jake. At least he ain't pretending he's something he's not. You're still the same loser who couldn't hack it." Then came the laughs, Mom's nervous giggle, Rick's deep guffaw, all piling on. Tommy didn't join in. I saw his little face pressed to the glass, looking worried. I walked back in, sat down, and ate my steak without a word. Lisa kept at it, tossing jabs about my do-gooder act and how I was compensating for something. Everyone laughed like trained seals. Tommy just poked at his fries, head down. When the bill came, I slapped down enough to cover it, $100, plus the to-go order. Rick mumbled a thanks, barely looking up. I stood, said, "It's paid. I'm out," and left. Through the window, I saw Lisa roll her eyes, probably spinning some story about me being a drama queen. Outside, the old guy was still there, eating slow, savoring every bite. I slipped him a 20 and told him to swing by my office if he needed anything. He nodded, said his name was Earl, and that was that. Driving home, I couldn't shake it. Lisa thought worth was about who you could step on. She had no idea I'd been propping up her precious store for years, loans, favors, you name it. I decided right then to dig into what she'd really been up to with all that success she bragged about. She'd regret that laugh, all right. And me? I was just getting started. After I walked out of Marvin's Grill that Saturday night, I couldn't sleep. Lisa's laugh kept rattling around in my head, like a loose bolt in a truck engine. I've taken a lot of her crap over the years, her snide comments, her way of acting like I'm some charity case she puts up with. But that "bum's got more worth than you" line? That was a bridge too far. By Sunday morning, I was done swallowing it. I fired up my coffee pot, cracked open my laptop, and started poking around. See, I've been tossing money into Taylor's Tools for years, loans to keep it afloat, cash for emergencies Lisa swore she'd pay back. I never asked questions, just trusted her cause she's family. Big mistake. That night at the restaurant flipped the switch, and I figured it was time to see what my big sister was really doing with all that success she loved to flaunt. My phone was already buzzing by noon. Text from Mom, Diane, saying stuff like, "Don't be so sensitive, Jake," and Lisa didn't mean it. Then one from Rick, "Good food, man, let's do it again sometime." Clueless as ever. I didn't reply to any of them, except Tommy. He sent me a picture of his B-17 model, half-painted, with a "Thanks for dinner, Uncle Jake." I shot him back a quick, "Looks awesome, kid," and left it at that. He's too young to get dragged into this mess, and I wasn't about to let him feel the heat. Monday, I got a call that lit the fuse. It was Pete, an old buddy of Dad's who still does some bookkeeping for the store part-time. He sounded jittery, like he'd been sitting on something heavy. "Jake," he said, "we gotta talk. Can you meet me?" I told him to swing by my office, small place off the highway where I run my trucking gig. He showed up an hour later, gray hair sticking out under a beat-up ball cap, carrying a stack of papers that looked like they'd been through a war zone. I didn't want to say nothing till I was sure he started, spreading the sheets across my desk. But Lisa's been pulling some funny stuff with the books. Funny stuff didn't cover it. Pete walked me through it. Numbers that didn't add up, cash disappearing into consulting fees for companies I'd never heard of, invoices for supplies we never got. Small at first, maybe $1,000 here or there, but it got bigger over time. We're talking tens of thousands, maybe more, siphoned off into God knows where. I brought it up to your mom a couple months back, Pete said, scratching his neck. She told me Lisa's got it under control, not to worry. But Jake, this ain't right. I leaned back in my chair, staring at those papers. Every time Lisa came to me with her hand out, just a little help, Jake, for Dad's legacy, I'd cut her a check. Now it looked like I'd been bankrolling her side hustle. I spent the next couple days digging deeper. Pete emailed me more records, bank statements, tax filings, stuff Lisa probably thought nobody'd ever check. I ain't no accountant, but I can spot a pattern when it's slapping me in the face. There were transfers to outfits like Riverside Solutions and Peak Consulting, names that sounded legit but didn't show up anywhere when I Googled them. One big chunk, 15 grand, went out the same day I paid for that dinner at Marvin's. Coincidence? Maybe. But my gut said no. Wednesday night, Rick called. Didn't pick up. Let it go to voicemail. Hey, Jake, his voice crackled through, all fake cheer. Lisa's got a big meeting with some suppliers Friday. Says it'd be great if you came, show some family support. You in? Suppliers, huh? I bet my left boot those suppliers were just another scam. I didn't call back, but it got me thinking. Lisa didn't know I was onto her yet. She thought I was still the same old Jake, ready to nod and smile while she played queen of the castle. That was her mistake. I started making calls of my own. Got in touch with a couple guys who used to work at the store, guys Lisa pushed out when she took over. One of them, Carl, told me she'd been cutting corners for years, stiffing vendors, shorting payroll. She'd tell us it was temporary, Carl said over the phone, but then she'd show up with a new car. We all saw it. Another guy, Mike, said she'd fired him after he asked about a missing bonus. Your dad wouldn't have stood for it, Jake, he added. He ran that place straight. Thursday, I drove by the store after hours. Lights were off, but Lisa's SUV was still in the lot. Wondered what she was cooking up in there. On a hunch, I called Pete again. You got anything recent? I asked. He sent over a file, latest bank transfer, 20 grand, dated 2 days ago, to some outfit called Horizon Partners. Same day she texted me about needing a favor. I was starting to see the game clear as day. Mom texted me that night. Jake, please don't do anything rash. Lisa's under a lot of pressure. Pressure? Yeah, must be tough keeping all those lies straight. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled up an old photo on my phone, me, Lisa, and Dad outside the store, back when it meant something. Dad always said family sticks together, but he never said nothing about letting family rob you blind. That old guy, Earl, from the restaurant? He'd stopped by my office Tuesday, said he used to deliver for Dad back in the day. Told me Lisa once chewed him out for being late during a snowstorm. Docked his pay for it. She's always been mean, Jake, he said, sipping the coffee I gave him. Just hides it better now. Friday's meeting was coming up fast. Lisa thought I'd show up, play the good brother, maybe sign something to keep her scheme rolling. She didn't know I'd already talked to Pete and a lawyer buddy, Dan, who said we had enough to take to the cops. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was ready. Lisa wanted to laugh at me? Fine. I'd see who was laughing when the truth came crashing down. Friday morning hit like a ton of bricks. I'd barely slept, running through all the dirt I dug up on Lisa, bank records, shady transfers, stories from old employees. My coffee was cold by the time I finished sorting the stack of papers Pete had sent over. I wasn't just guessing anymore. I had proof my sister was crooked as a bent nail. That meeting she wanted me at? I was going, all right, but not to play her game. I stuffed 3 folders into my truck's passenger seat, one for the store's suppliers, one for the cops, and one for Mom, who'd have to face the mess her perfect daughter made. Lisa thought she had me pegged as the pushover little brother. She was about to get a hard lesson. I got to Taylor's Tools at 8:30, half an hour early. The store was quiet, just a couple delivery guys unloading in the back. Pete was already there, fidgeting by the office door with a laptop under his arm. You sure about this, Jake? He asked, voice low. She's your sister. I nodded. She stopped being my sister when she started stealing from folks who trusted her. He didn't argue, just set up his stuff in the meeting room, a cramped space with a long table, faded photos of Dad on the wall, and a coffee pot that hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. Lisa rolled in at 8:55, all confidence and high heels, Rick trailing her like a lost puppy. She saw me and flashed that same smirk from the restaurant. Well, look who's here, she said, tossing her purse on the table. Finally stepping up, Jake? About time you joined the team. I didn't bite, just watched the suppliers file in. 3 guys in suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Mom showed up last, her face tight, like she could feel the storm brewing but didn't know why. She gave me a quick nod, then sat next to Lisa, clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline. Lisa kicked things off, all bluster and big talk. Gentlemen, she said to the suppliers, we're here to lock in a new deal, exclusive contract. Big expansion for Taylor's tools. My brother's here to show we're a united front. She shot me a look, expecting me to nod like Rick always did. I let her ramble for 10 minutes, growth plans, profit margins, the works. She was good, I'll give her that, painting a picture of a thriving business. Too bad it was all built on quicksand. I waited till she paused for breath, then slid the first folder across the table. Before we sign anything, I said, keeping my voice steady, let's talk about these payments from the last 2 years. I handed copies to the suppliers, who started flipping through bank statements, invoices, transfers to Riverside Solutions, and Peak Consulting. Lisa's smirk twitched, just for a second. What's this, Jake? One of the suits asked, frowning at the numbers. This about accountability, I said, locking eyes with Lisa. Care to explain the 20 grand to Horizon Partners last week? Or should I? Her face went stiff, like she'd been slapped. Rick shifted in his seat, clueless as ever, muttering, what's he talking about, babe? Lisa tried to laugh it off. This is nonsense, she said, waving a hand. Jake's just stirring trouble 'cause he's jealous. I've kept this place running while he's off playing truck driver. I didn't flinch. Running it into the ground, you mean? I shot back, opening the second folder. Fake invoices, Lisa. Money funneled to shell companies. You even dipped into the employee bonus pool, 10 grand last Christmas, right when you bought that new hot tub. The room got real quiet. Mom's coffee cup hit the table with a clink, her hands shaking. The suppliers were scribbling notes now, one of them whispering to his buddy. Lisa's cool started cracking. You don't know what you're talking about, she snapped. Business takes tough calls. I had to cover some gaps, that's all. Gaps? I pulled out a receipt. 5 grand for a weekend in Vegas. Same day, she told me the store needed emergency funds. This a gap, too? Rick finally piped up, voice wobbly. Vegas? You said that was a work trip. Lisa glared at him, but the damage was done. I kept going, laying out every lie, dates, amounts, proof she'd been skimming for years. She tried to spin it, blaming Pete, saying he cooked the books. Pete just shook his head, pulled up his laptop, and showed the originals, her signatures all over them. Ain't my handwriting, Lisa, he said, calm as a stone. Mom broke in, voice small. Jake, what are you doing? She's family. I slid the third folder her way, police reports I'd filed that morning, based on what Dan, my lawyer buddy, helped me put together. Family don't steal from family, Mom, I said. Or from the people who've worked here 30 years. Lisa's eyes went wide, darting to the folder like it was a live grenade. You wouldn't, she hissed. I stood up. Remember what you said about that bum having more worth than me? At least he ain't a thief hiding behind a smile. The suppliers packed up fast, one muttering about reassessing the deal. Rick looked like he might puke. Mom stared at the table, tears pooling in her coffee. Lisa tried one last swing. You can't do this, Jake. I'm your sister. I grabbed my keys. No, you're a crook who shares my last name. And you're done. I walked out, leaving them to stew. Pete texted me later. Suppliers pulled out, and the cops were on their way to the store. Lisa didn't know it yet, but her little empire was toast. Me? I was just warming up. I was halfway to my truck when Pete texted me. Cops just pulled up. Lisa's losing it. I could have turned around, watched the show, but I didn't need to. Knew it was coming the second I handed Dan those folders yesterday. I'd spent Thursday night with him, going over every scrap of evidence, bank transfers, fake invoices, that Vegas receipt, and he'd said it was airtight. She's looking at fraud, maybe embezzlement, he told me, sipping a beer in his cluttered office. You sure you want to pull this trigger? I was. After what she said at Marvin's grill, after years of her treating me like dirt while pocketing my cash, I was done playing nice. So I drove off, let the law take its swing, and figured I'd hear the rest soon enough. By noon, my phone was blowing up. Mom first. Jake, how could you? She's in handcuffs. Then Rick, this is crazy, man. Call it off. I didn't answer either, just let them stew. Tommy sent me a text too, short and sad. Mom's crying. Are you mad at us? That one stung. I wrote back, not at you, buddy. Promise I'll explain later. He didn't need to be caught in the crossfire, and I'd make damn sure he wasn't. The rest could wait. Pete called around too, filling me in. They hauled her out in front of the staff, he said, voice heavy, screaming about how it's all a mistake, blaming you, me, even the suppliers. Rick just stood there, useless. Your mom followed him to the station, bawling her eyes out. I could picture it, Lisa thrashing like a trapped raccoon, Mom trailing behind, still believing her golden girl could do no wrong. Pete said the cops took boxes of files, the laptop too. They're digging deep, Jake. This ain't small potatoes. I spent the afternoon at my office, trying to focus on trucking schedules, but my head was elsewhere. Around 4, Dan rang. They're holding her, he said. Found more than we gave him, offshore accounts hidden in her name. She's been at this a while. I wasn't shocked. Lisa always had a knack for covering her tracks, just didn't count on anyone looking. What's next? I asked. Bail hearing tomorrow, Dan said. But with what they've got, she's not walking easy. You might want to brace for blowback. Blowback was already here. Mom's next text hit like a brick. You've destroyed us, Jake. Happy now? I wasn't happy. Mad? Yeah. Tired? Sure. But happy? Nah. This wasn't about joy, it was about what's right. Lisa had been screwing over the store, the employees, even me, for years, all while laughing in my face. That old guy, Earl, from the restaurant? He stopped by again that afternoon, looking cleaner, like he'd found a shower somewhere. Heard about the ruckus, he said, sitting across from me with a mug of my cheap coffee. She had it coming. Your dad fired a guy once for skimming $50. Lisa took millions. Millions. The word hit hard. I'd figured thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Millions meant she'd gutted the place. Earl told me more, stuff he'd seen back when he hauled for Dad. Lisa had been shady even then, fudging delivery logs, pocketing cash from shorted orders. She thought she was untouchable, he said, shaking his head. Guess she forgot folks like you don't quit. I didn't say much, just listened. When he left, I gave him a sandwich from the deli down the street and told him to keep in touch. He nodded, said, "You're good people, Jake," and shuffled off. Good people. Didn't feel like it right then. Evening came, and Rick showed up at my place unannounced, banging on the door like a lunatic. I let him in, mostly 'cause I didn't want the neighbors calling the cops too. He looked wrecked, hair a mess, eyes red. "You gotta fix this, Jake," he pleaded, pacing my living room. "She's a mess, says it's all lies. We got Tommy to think about." I crossed my arms. She should have thought about Tommy before she started stealing. "You see those accounts, Rick? Bahamas, Vegas, all while I'm bailing her out." He froze. Bahamas. Guess Lisa hadn't told him everything. "Yeah," I said, tossing him a printout Dan had sent, 10 grand wired offshore, same week she bought that hot tub. "Ask her about that." He sank onto my couch, head in his hands. "I didn't know," he mumbled. "She said it was business." "It was," I said. "Her business, not the store's." He didn't argue, just sat there, deflated. I almost felt bad, almost. "Go home, Rick," I told him. "Take care of Tommy. This ain't on you, yet." He left without a word, shoulders slumped like a whipped dog. Later, I drove by Marvin's grill. Saw Earl out front again, eating that sandwich slow, like it was his last meal. Stopped and asked if he needed a ride. He shook his head, said he was fine, but thanked me anyway. "Your sister's learning the hard way," he said, grinning a little. "Karma's a mean old gal." I laughed, first time in days. Karma was mean, all right, and she wasn't done yet. Lisa's bail hearing was tomorrow, and I'd be there, not to help, but to watch her squirm. She'd mocked me for helping Earl, called me worthless. Now she'd see what worthless really looked like, her, in a jail cell, with nothing left to laugh about.